The smell of antiseptic was the first thing I noticed. Then the beeping. Slow, steady, relentless. I opened my eyes to a ceiling I didn't recognize, fluorescent lights humming above me, and a nurse I had never seen in my life leaning over to check my IV line. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it came back all at once. The kitchen floor, the pain in my chest like something heavy had been placed directly on my sternum, the sound of my own voice calling out even though no one was home. My son was not in that room. I knew before I even asked. I looked at the chair beside my bed, the one where a person who loves you is supposed to sit, and it was empty. There was a small paper cup of water on the table next to it. Someone had placed it there out of habit or kindness. Not him. "You're awake," the nurse said, and she smiled the way nurses smile when they're relieved the situation didn't get worse on their shift. "You gave us quite a scare." I tried to speak, and my throat was dry. She handed me the cup. "Your emergency contact," she said, hesitating just slightly. "We've been trying to reach him. There's been no answer." I nodded like that made sense, like it was a normal piece of information to receive while lying in a hospital bed with wires attached to your chest. "My name is Margaret. I'm 63 years old. I live alone in a 2-bedroom house in Clover Hill, Virginia, which I've maintained by myself for the past 11 years, since my husband Raymond passed. I worked as a school librarian for 26 years. I raised one son, and I gave him everything I had. His name is Derek. He was 34 years old when I had my heart attack on a Tuesday morning in March. He lived 40 minutes away. He had listed himself as my emergency contact. The hospital called him 22 times over the course of 2 days. He never picked up once. I would not find out why until later. And when I did, I wish I could say I was shocked. The cardiologist, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Okafor, came to explain what had happened to me in plain language. A significant cardiac event, he called it. I had been lucky. A neighbor, I'll come back to her, had heard something through the wall we shared and made the decision to check on me. That decision is the reason I am here to tell this story at all. Her name is Patrice. She is 67, recently widowed, originally from Savannah, Georgia, with a laugh that fills a room and a habit of leaving bread on my doorstep whenever she bakes. We had been neighbors for 4 years. We had shared maybe 40 conversations total. She was not family. She was not even a close friend yet, but she was the one who called 911. She was the one who rode in the ambulance with me because she told the paramedics somebody who knows her should be there. She was the one who sat in the waiting room for 3 hours while I was in surgery. She called her own daughter from that waiting room to say she'd be home late. She did not leave. My son, during those same hours, was at a bachelor party weekend in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I know this not because he told me. I know it because when I was finally moved out of the ICU and into a regular room, a hospital volunteer helped me check my phone. Derek had posted photographs on his social media the night of my heart attack. There he was with his friends on a boat. There he was holding a drink. There was a caption, "No phones, no problems. Living my best life this weekend." Posted 11 hours after the hospital's first call to him. I put my phone face down on the blanket. I did not cry. I want to make sure I say that clearly. I did not cry. Patrice was sitting in the chair beside my bed when I set the phone down. She had gone home to sleep and shower, and she had come back. She had brought me a cardigan from my own closet because she'd kept my spare key for emergencies, and she knew hospitals are cold. She looked at my face and she didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "Do you want me to turn the TV on?" I said yes. And we watched a home renovation show for 2 hours, and she made commentary on every bad tile choice, and I laughed 3 times, which hurt my chest, which was worth it. Derek called on the 3rd day. By then, I had already been told I would be discharged soon, that I would need to take new medications and avoid certain stresses and come back for follow-up appointments and make changes to how I was living. I had already started thinking about who would drive me home. It was not going to be my son. When his name appeared on my phone screen, I looked at it for a long moment. I answered, "Mom," he said, and his voice had that particular quality it gets when he knows something is wrong and he is trying to figure out how much I know. I just heard, are you okay? What happened?" "I had a heart attack," I said. "On Tuesday." Silence. "Tuesday," he repeated. "Yes, Mom, I was away and I didn't have service, and the hospital called you 22 times, I said. I kept my voice very even. I had decided before I answered that I was going to be very calm, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I wanted to hear exactly what he said without giving him a target to aim at. "They called from the hospital number. They left voicemails. They tried your work number from your intake form." Another silence. "I'm coming right now," he said. "I'm getting in the car right now. I'm being discharged tomorrow," I said. "Patrice is taking me home." "Who is, Mom? I should be the one." "Derek," I said quietly. "I'm tired. I'll talk to you when I'm home and rested." I ended the call. I set the phone back on the table. Patrice, who had stepped out into the hallway to give me privacy, appeared in the doorway and raised her eyebrows. I shook my head slightly. She came in and sat back down. "More TV?" she said. "Please," I said. The drive home the next day was unremarkable except for the way the light looked on the trees along the road, which were just starting to bud. I had not seen a tree in 5 days. I had not breathed outdoor air. I sat in Patrice's passenger seat and watched the world moving outside the window and thought about how different things could have gone. How different they nearly went. My house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I looked at it differently now. Patrice helped me inside and made sure I had everything I needed and wrote her number on a notepad on my kitchen counter, even though I already had it. She said, "I'm 20 feet away. You knock on that wall and I'll hear it." I believed her. I had evidence now that this was true. Derek arrived 45 minutes after I got home. He knocked, which he never does. He usually just walks in, and I thought that said something, though I wasn't sure what. He stood in my doorway looking like a man who was preparing to negotiate. He had flowers, grocery store flowers, the kind wrapped in plastic with a rubber band around them. He held them out and said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." I stepped back to let him in. I did not take the flowers immediately. I let him hold them. I am not telling this story to make my son sound like a monster. I want to be honest about that. Derek is not a bad person in the way that word is usually meant. He is someone who, over the years, gradually came to treat my presence in his life as a constant, something that would always be there, requiring no maintenance, no tending, no urgency. I had been for a long time whatever he needed me to be when he needed it, available for holidays when it was convenient, helpful with money during rough stretches, and there had been several rough stretches. Present at every important event of his life. Front row, on time, sometimes having rearranged other things to be there. He had, I realized that afternoon in my living room, simply never been required to do the same for me. That is not entirely his fault. I had made it easy not to. He stayed for 2 hours. He apologized several times. He explained about the bachelor party. Close friends, very important. He had really tried to disconnect. He didn't think anyone would need him. He said he should have checked his phone more. He said he would have come immediately if he'd known. I listened to all of it. I asked one question. "When you saw the posts going up on Friday and no one had heard from me, did you call to check?" He looked at the floor. "I figured you were just at your book club thing," he said. "My book club meets on Wednesdays?" He had known this for 3 years. I nodded slowly. He left before dinner. He hugged me at the door, and he was genuine in it. I could feel that, and I hugged him back because I love my son. And that does not stop being true because he disappointed me. But I stood in my doorway after his car pulled away, and I felt something settle in me, not anger, something more like clarity. I spent the following weeks recovering. Patrice brought meals over more often than was strictly necessary, and I started doing the same in return. And somewhere in those weeks, we stopped being just neighbors and became something else. She introduced me to her daughter on a video call and said without any preamble, "This is my friend Margaret, you'll like her." Her daughter laughed and said hi, and I laughed too. Derek called regularly during this time. He was attentive in the way people sometimes become after a scare, calling twice a week, asking about my medications, offering to come by for things. I accepted the calls. I let him be present. But I noticed that the attentiveness felt slightly performative, slightly like someone checking a box. And I noticed that, which told me something. About 6 weeks after I came home, I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Okafor. He reviewed my numbers, told me I was doing well, and mentioned gently that stress management was going to be a long-term consideration. He asked about my support system. I told him about Patrice. He smiled and wrote something in my chart and said, "That kind of support matters more than people realize." On the drive home, I stopped at my attorney's office. Her name is Carol. She has handled my paperwork for 15 years, and she knows me well enough to not ask too many questions when I sit down and say, "I need to talk about my will." We talked about it for an hour. I had written my will years ago, when Derek was younger and Raymond was still alive and things seemed more straightforward. I had left everything to Derek: the house, the savings, a small investment account that had grown more than I expected over the years. It added up, Carol had once told me, to considerably more than most people assumed. I had not looked at those documents since Raymond died. I sat in Carol's office and I thought about the chair beside my hospital bed. Empty. I thought about Patrice's face in the doorway of my hospital room, cardigan in hand. I thought about Derek on a boat in Myrtle Beach with a drink in his hand and a caption about "no phones, no problems." I thought about what it means to be someone's emergency contact. I didn't make any dramatic decisions that day. I told Carol I was thinking through some things and I asked her to pull up the existing documents so I could review them. I read every page. I told her I would be in touch. I did not say anything to Derek. Summer arrived gradually the way it does in Virginia, and things settled into a new rhythm. I was feeling stronger. I had joined a walking group that met 3 mornings a week, which was partly for the exercise and partly because Patrice had suggested it and signed up too, and it turned out to be one of the better decisions I had made in years. There were 6 of us, all women, all somewhere between 55 and 72, and we walked 3 miles through the neighborhood and talked about everything and nothing. And I came home from those mornings feeling like myself in a way I hadn't in a long time. Derek came to dinner once in July. He was warm and easy that evening, the version of himself I had always loved, funny and thoughtful when he slowed down enough to be present. We had a good night. I felt the complicated truth of loving someone who has let you down and knowing those two things can both be real at the same time. But I had already been back to Carol's office. Twice. The paperwork had been updated. Not vindictively, not dramatically. Carefully and after long thought and in a way I believed was fair and honest. Patrice was included now, not the majority, but a meaningful portion. The rest had been restructured, with conditions and considerations I won't detail here because they're private, but which reflected what I had learned about who shows up and who doesn't. Derek did not know. He found out in September. I don't know exactly how. I hadn't told anyone except Carol, and I trust her completely, so I suspect he heard something secondhand through a cousin of mine who knew I had been in to update documents. Small towns have long memories and loose lips, and Clover Hill is small enough. However it happened, he called me on a Thursday evening and his voice was different. Tighter. Careful. "Mom," he said, "is everything okay with you? I heard you were doing some legal stuff and I just wanted to make sure you're all right." "I'm fine," I said. "I update my paperwork regularly." "It's responsible." "Right," he said. "Right, yeah. It's just, I heard you might have made some changes and I—" "Derek," I said. "What is it you want to ask me?" A pause. "Did you change your will?" I let the question sit for a moment. "I reviewed my documents. Yes," I said. "I think it's wise to do that after a significant health event. Carol actually recommends it." "But are things different now?" "Things are always different," I said. "That's the nature of life." He came over the next afternoon without calling first, which he hadn't done in months. He sat at my kitchen table, and he was honest. At least, I will give him that. He didn't pretend the conversation wasn't about money. He said he wanted to understand what had changed, whether this was about March, whether he could make it right. I made us both coffee. I sat down across from him. I looked at my son, this person I had carried and raised and worried over and prayed for and given 34 years of my life to. And I felt the complicated tenderness of it all, and I told him the truth. I almost didn't make it back, I said. You know that. And when I was lying in that hospital room, the person who was with me, who had been with me from the beginning, was not you. That's not about punishment. That's just information. And I decided to let my decisions reflect reality rather than assumption. He was quiet for a long time. I can be better, he said. I hope so, I said. I genuinely hope so. But hope isn't a plan, Derek. And I'm 63 years old. I don't have time to wait and see. He left that evening without the kind of resolution he came looking for. I think part of him hoped there was something he could say or promise that would reverse things immediately. There wasn't. That's not how I work anymore. Patrice knocked on our shared wall that night, our signal, which we had developed, and I knocked back, which meant, come over, and she came over with a bottle of wine, and we sat on my back porch while the evening cooled around us and the fireflies started up in the grass, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is a rare gift. When I finished, she poured a little more into my glass and said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it honestly. Like myself, I said. For the first time in a long time, she raised her glass. I raised mine. Derek is in my life still. He calls, he comes by, and there are moments, genuine ones where I see the son I raised in him and I'm grateful he exists. We are rebuilding something, slowly, with more honesty than we had before. I require more from him now. I say so. He is, mostly, rising to that. But I no longer make it easy to be absent. I no longer treat my own time and love and presence as a resource without value. I spent a long time being the person who adjusts, who accommodates, who makes herself smaller so others can be more comfortable. I had a heart attack on a Tuesday morning and lay on my kitchen floor and waited to find out whether anyone would come. Someone came. It just wasn't who I expected. I kept the house. I kept the savings. I kept my $80,000 from the investment account that I had tended carefully for decades. I kept my life, which is the thing that matters most, and I gave a portion of that life and what I leave behind of it to the people who had already proven without being asked that they would show up. Patrice doesn't know the full details of what I've arranged. She would be embarrassed if she did, but she will not be forgotten. Of that I am certain. I walk 3 mornings a week now. I take my medication. I have a standing dinner with Patrice on Fridays. I answer my own phone when it rings. I no longer keep my feelings folded away in a drawer somewhere, waiting for a better moment to unfold them. I had to nearly lose my life to learn to live it. If you're listening and there's someone in your life who's been treating your presence as a given, who has been spending your love like a currency with no interest in the exchange rate, I hope something in this story lands somewhere useful for you. You are someone's emergency contact. Make sure they deserve to be yours.